course, Kent.
Hello, how are you?
Very
Yes.
well, my man. Delighted
Thanks.
to have you on the Modern Warrior
Thanks
podcast.
for having me, Gavin. Cheers.
Yeah, delighted. And I first came across you on TikTok, as I'm
Okay.
sure many people have,
Mm-hmm.
when TikTok blew up. And then I started to dig into it a little bit further in terms of who's this guy, where's he come from, and realized that you've been on the scene since 2009.
Yeah,
And
even
it was
earlier, actually.
2007 nearly, wasn't it? Or
2005 is when I did my
2005.
first ever gig.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
go right back, and
Yeah.
that's when I first started doing stand-up. But
Yeah.
yeah, 2009 probably went full-time-ish,
Yeah.
you know?
It's when you sort of burst
Yeah.
onto the scene. as
Yeah,
such, is
like
it?
kind of burst onto the scene, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know it's been turbulent for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's been a lot
coaster.
of back and forth and ups
Yeah.
and downs, which we can get into in this conversation. I think it's the journey you've been on has been incredible in terms of how you've managed the setbacks, how you've managed the failures and the difficulties along the way, because there was the COVID
Yes.
pandemic, of
Yeah.
course, that threw an absolute span in the works for you.
Huge, yeah.
There was, of course, all the difficulties that comes with having to establish yourself as a comedian. So
Yeah.
we get into all these sort of avenues that you had to maneuver and navigate in order to get to where you are today, which you're absolutely smashing it. So, because there's men out there and there's people out there who have dreams or ambitions or goals, and they're remaining to be stuck, or they're stuck in the comfort zone and not making those moves and making those changes. For you, it seemed like you made a move and you've reaped the rewards of that. But of course, it's come with a lot of effort and difficulties along the way. So if you bring us back to even before 2005,
Yes.
what was your life like?
Yeah, you mentioned being stuck there, and there was definitely periods where I felt very stuck in this whole journey that you're talking about, and was terrified and paralyzed to make a move, you know. So before 2005, before I did comedy, I was an apprentice electrician. Something that I got into. I didn't go to a school that would have been the best or had the best reputation. I came from an area that doesn't have the best reputation. And back then it was get a job, get a trade. That was a big thing. What people didn't talk about college. It was get a trade. And electrical was the top of that. You know what I mean? That was like become an electrician, you'll never be out of work sort of thing.
It's a safety thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a safe job.
You'll never be out of work. Yeah. And that was kind of the recurring phrase. And then I got offered the job. I used to box from the ages of 14 to about 20. And I got offered an apprenticeship with that. And I was working in a butcher's at the time. And then I got offered this apprenticeship. I was actually working at fishmongers at the time. I was working at butchers mostly. Then I went to fishmongers. Then I got offered this job as an electrician, apprentice electrician. And I jumped at it. And I was terrified.
What age were you at that time?
I would have been, when I got my apprenticeship, so let me think now. I would have been 17, 18, just out of school.
This was after the leaving cert?
Just after the leaving cert.
Yeah.
So you needed your leaving cert for the electrical. You needed the maths.
Yeah.
So I had that. It was more difficult to get the trade. And so the guy that, one of the guy's dads that I used to box with was like, have you got your leaving cert? Blah, blah, blah. Would you be interested in doing an apprenticeship? He worked with a big company. So I jumped at the opportunity, absolutely terrified. But, you know, like I handed my notice in the fishmongers. And then I remember being told actually that your first day's work is in Gorman, Sound County, Meath. So that pushed me outside my comfort zone. I was only 17, 18. I had to go and do this job. And back then, no motorways, no nothing. I didn't drive. I had to meet a guy in Douglas that was taking me to my first day on the job. And that was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And I missed my lift. I forgot to stand up about this. My alarm didn't go off. So my dad drove me to the train station. I got a train to Dublin, a bus across Dublin, another train, and then another bus. And I was like 7.5 hours late. First day on the job. Really skinny, scrawny little chap, like a retainer, big work boots, you know, felt so outside my comfort zone. But these things for me, like they're so relevant. Like if you're comfortable walking in there, then alarm bells start ringing. And even down through the years, apprentices coming through when I became qualified, it was the guys that were like overly confident and overly assured themselves. You'd be like, oh, I need to keep an eye on them now because to kind of do something really stupid.
Thinks he knows everything.
Whereas you think someone with a bit of, being a bit inquisitive and asking questions, you'd much rather that. But so that was kind of the start of it. I did my apprenticeship then. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be away from home. I was in a relationship at the time. I thought I was young and was like, oh, I'm with a girl. How can I be leaving her? Stupidly naive that I was like 17.
You moved away from home that time. You started to live.
Well, you had to go up to where the work was for 5 days a week, and then you're home for the weekends. And eventually, I sort of got taken back to Cork on a different job, and really loved the apprenticeship. Then, really loved it. Did it for however many years until I was qualified and moved over to Australia then for a while. So worked over there as an electrician. I had started doing comedy at that point, but it was very much a hobby, But it was the electrical work that was keeping me going and keeping me traveling and all that.
Yeah. So then, where did the comedy come into the frame with all of this going on? So you've pretty much established a career here.
Yeah.
And then you're doing comedy on the side. You're doing a few gigs here and there.
Doing comedy on the side. Yeah. See, Des Bishop, you know Des?
Yeah.
He came to my area and he did a show called Joy in the Hood, which was where he did comedy in disadvantaged areas and sort of wanted to bring new people into the comedy scene, which is like a great idea.
I think I remember that show.
A lot of the time it can be people that are in the arts or their parents or are being kind of bankrolled, and that's where a lot of comedians come from in London. So he went into, intentionally went into these areas to go, these guys are funny. Des was like, these people are funny, these people on building sites and these people just, and he went in. And so I didn't do that show, but I knew the people on it. And I then went to watch them do the big finale in, like, it was the TV show where they all did stand up, and I just got real buzz for it straight away. And then I sort of followed them and supported them, I guess, to little comedy clubs around Cork, and it opened my eyes to the fact that this is amazing. Yeah. I wasn't a massive fan of stand-up before, to be honest, but the fact that these people that I didn't know of, this is not Tommy Tiernan, this is not Des Bishop, this is not like Dumbelievable. This is the guy that I was just talking to 5 minutes ago, or the girl trying stand up. And then that really opened my eyes to the fact that, you could do this. And, was waiting to be kind of asked, but wasn't asked. Yeah. And just had to sort of put my hat in the ring and say, I want to do this. Can I have a gig? Can I try this out? You had to find out that you had to find for yourself that it was actually possible for you to be that. So, and then these people proved it to you because, as you said, they were just normal people. Joe that lived that just like works in the shop there. They were coming in from jobs.
I remember that show actually. That was a great show.
It was a great show.
Des would come in and coach them, wasn't it?
Des coached them and then they would gave them tips and all that. Yeah. And I don't think that would have suited me at all.
Okay.
So I'm glad I didn't do the show because I'd be very introverted. I wouldn't have taken place in any of the games. So I didn't even tell really anybody, bar my wife, we weren't married at the time, that I was going to do comedy. And the people that were doing comedy. I didn't tell anybody about it. Super, super nervous. But something in me wanted to try it.
Yeah.
Even when I boxed when I was younger, I was terrified of being bullied, and there was a teeny bit of bullying going on, but something has always pushed me towards being outside my comfort zone. I don't know what it is. So why you'd be pushed into doing boxing. And I remember my first couple of fights being just terrified for days before it, and then getting into the ring and the nerves kind of dissipating and getting a bloody nose and getting a couple of slaps and being like, okay, it's actually not that bad. I'm okay with this, So I've always been sort of pushing myself out of my comfort zone to an extent. And then the comedy was just something where I was outside my comfort zone, but I enjoyed it so much. I was like getting a real buzz off it, So then that kind of planted a seed. It was a hobby for a long time, very long time. But to be honest with you, I was always in the back of my mind saying, I love to do this as my job. I'd love to make a career out of this. Maybe I would have confided that in my wife and nobody else. Everybody else, I said, it's a hobby. I love doing it. I do it for fun, because people will question you. You're getting into your car after work when the gigs are coming in and you're driving to Belfast for a gig, and then you're driving back and you're not getting any money for it, and you're doing 5 minutes in the hope that they'll give you 10 minutes and give you 50 quid. So, you have to be careful with your ambitions, I think, because it's very easy for someone else to dissuade you. Even if they might not mean it, they just go, why would you do that? And why would you do it though? It's crazy. So you have to sort of, in my mind, go, I'm doing it because I love it, and I'll secretly in my mind, I was like, yeah, I'll start to get into all these places, and I'll be like, hopefully one of the best open spots, and then one of the best support acts, and then it's all these little steps on the ladder. And then I wanted to start headlining comedy clubs. Then I want to start selling my own tickets. So it all kind of like each thing is replaced by another little dream or whatever,
Yeah, I hear you. So when you went into comedy, or you started doing this as a hobby,
yes,
was the intention to turn it into something? Did you have?
Yeah. Inside, yes, but not early
Quietly.
days. Early days, but inside, yes. I remember saying it to my wife. I was about a year in, maybe a year and a half, and I thought I was good at it. Naturally enough, I thought I just had, and I was just sort of expressing the way I think about things, and I was getting laughs for it. So I was like, oh, there's something, and I was talking to some comedians, and I just got a buzz, because you do see people that are a little bit further along than you. For example, you go to Dublin and you start to work with, I guess, some professional comedians, and you're like, oh, I don't think I'm that far off being as good as what they can do. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, and eventually you start making a teeny bit of money. Like, it takes a long time, but you're going, okay, and just more and more things start to take off, and you go, okay, I'd like to do this. And it's a slog, to be honest, in the beginning, to be a clubbing comic. Like, I remember being comedian for about a year and a half, moved to Australia, worked as an electrician, but did loads of comedy over there too, was getting paid a little bit, moved back from Australia in 2008, big crash, huge crash, got about a month's work as an electrician, and then I was looking for work everywhere. I could not get work as an electrician. So it kind of forced me down this little path. And that coincided with the time when I came back from Australia. I'd gotten a bit better again at comedy. I had a little bit of a buzz going. I think I won a competition in Dublin. And that coincided with, I can't get any work as an electrician. I'm starting to get paid more and more from comedy. So it just realigned my focus and gave me an excuse. And
one door closed.
And an easier
one
justification to my parents to go, he doesn't have any electrical work now. So, whereas, if electrical was still up and going and I was making good money, they'd be like, why are you going to Belfast? Why are you going to Dublin? What are you doing taking a week, 3 days off to fly over to Manchester or whatever? So it was a bit easier. It was just more justifiable to myself, and the fact that I didn't find myself having to explain to people, But it was still a slog. But I remember, I was like, a couple of months in, I was like, I'm making money. This is like, as hard as it is, you're like, what I love is making me money now. It might not be the most money in the world, but it was so cool to me. I was like, I am making money off something I love doing. And to be in that position is just, it kind of outweighs all the difficulties and everything else that comes with it,
How do you survive the slog, though, when it's so difficult and it's a grind?
It's hard. I think my wife has always been extremely supportive and genuinely. You just take the setbacks. You just kind of, it's difficult, but you just kind of, you have to keep on believing in yourself and going, I know I can. And for me, it was just like little tiny milestones. I never said, oh, I didn't get live at the Apollo, so I feel really bad now. Because in the early days, there was talk of TV shows and producers coming to see it, and all of that kind of slips away because most people don't go down that route. But I was kind of going little tiny milestones. Like, I was like, okay, I moved to Dublin, and I was like, I'll move to Dublin, and I was able to gig more often, and I was able to fly over to England. And after a couple of years, I got an agent in Dublin, and they started to get me a little bit some more support act work for other comedians, and that opened my eyes to like, okay, these are big rooms. These are not comedy clubs, and they're not like just Dublin or Cork or the Opera House. It's like, these are cool rooms around the country, and it opened my eyes to go, there's a gap in the market here, I think, where I can also envisage myself getting a bit of work or whatever. But the grind never really, like I said, I'm always pushing myself outside my comfort zone, I think. Dublin was comfortable after a while. I was in all the clubs. I was a regular headliner. I was starting to do my own tours as well. I was getting some support acts, but I felt like I've come as far as I can in Dublin now to a certain extent. And then I was like, let's move to England. And my wife was like, okay, always very supportive, had a full-time job herself, gave up her job. We moved to London, and the grind started again, because you're just starting from the very bottom over there. you're an open spot. It doesn't matter what you did in Dublin. I found myself going into lots of clubs again, being like, oh, we're going to give him 5 minutes, see how he does. And, I was able to progress a lot quicker over there because I had 7-8 years behind me in Ireland, and I was headlining all the clubs and I was established. But that bit, definitely, I'd say the first year in England for us, she was on terrible money. I was on worse money. And it was just hard, I remember like my car breaking down and being like, I don't know how I'm going to fix this. I have no money at all to fix my car. And you'd feel like crying and you'd be like, this is just, why is this so hard?
Create a joke out of it and then start a show.
Exactly. Well, and that's always, every kind of dark moment in my life, I've always, when I'm in it, it's hard for me. But the best part about being a comedian is I'll leave it and retrospectively, I just write material about it. And then people can relate to it and it ends up in a show and ironically like ends up making me money. So it's a kind of a lovely circle really. But those couple of years in England for sure were the hardest, the absolute hardest. And we had no childcare because we had our first kid over there. My mother was flying in. And as I was flying out to Ireland to do gigs and to babysit, and the whole thing just felt like a bit crazy. But it started to make a little bit of progress. My tours got a tiny bit bigger. And, but we always wanted to kind of then maybe move back to Ireland. Started to make sense to come back here.
Yeah.
And then obviously the pandemic happened and that just smashed everything. That was right at the point where I was making, I think I did, on my first Vicar Street then, I had my Everyman was sold out in Cork, which is a big gig in Cork. And my tour in Ireland was looking really healthy. It was like purely through my own kind of touring relentlessly every year, starting from scratch, blank paper. I'm going to go back with a brand new show next year. And if 20 more people turn up, I'm doing good. And that was my attitude everywhere, So when that happened, that was my first, I felt like that tour in 2020 was a big step up. It was like a lot of the venues were bigger. Vicar Street was on. It was going very well. The Everyman was on. It was going very well. The show was finished. Like I was enjoying it. I'd started the tour. And then obviously you couldn't have predicted the pandemic. And when that came, it just felt like the biggest blow ever. Honestly, I was walking to the train station and at the time, I don't know if you remember, when it was kind of breaking, a lot of people had these perceived notions like, oh, sure, all of the bigger venues are going to close down, but the smaller ones are going to be fine. And I was mainly in small venues. So I was like, cool, that's all right. I was a little bit disappointed. I thought I'm going to have to move my 2 big shows maybe. And I remember walking to the train station the day that Leo Varadkar was making his little announcements on the steps. And my agent called me and was like, Chris, don't, it's cancelled. Everything is gone. All the gigs are gone. And I was just like, what? And I had bought my train ticket already. I went up and got a refund for it. And I walked back up the hill and my friends were in the WhatsApp group going, oh no, everything's closed. And I was like going, yeah, I just lost like all my work. And one of them rang me. He's like in social welfare and stuff. And he couldn't help me anyway because he's over here and I was over there. But he was trying to reassure me and tell me that schemes would come in over here in England as well. But that was definitely the biggest blow professionally. I felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath me because the thing is, the show was finished. I'd put so much work into it. I'd been writing it for a year and the tickets were sold as well. So the Everyman and Vicar Street were nearly sold out, you know what I mean? So the tickets were sold and they were a couple of weeks out and I'd put all this work in and then it was like I wasn't going to get paid. And I sort of spent that money in my head and
Yeah.
I depended on it. It was like, this is my rent for such and such months. And then it was all gone. So that first day or two, it was just like, oh my God.
You got to the top of the mountain and somebody just
and then it
pushed you off
just
it.
felt
Yeah.
like a rug from underneath me. But, after a couple of days, you go, okay, it's fine. And then some help came in over there where you were able to apply for, I can't remember what it was. It was like 80% of your earnings for the last couple of years, which didn't bring me up too much because it was a hard time in England anyway. But it was enough to sort of cover the rent and the weather was beautiful. and I got forced away. I was probably hanging an awful lot in comedy back then as well. Looking back, I was putting all my self-worth into it, and I wasn't really, it probably was a little bit unhealthy, I think.
You neglected yourself.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I was putting everything into it, and all my thoughts were about work. And even though I loved it, it's still, you need a little bit of separation. You need time for your family.
You create the beast, and then the beast can consume you. Yeah, if you're not careful.
And it did. And but then I got into this forced kind of, you have all this time off now, and it was amazing. Genuinely, that first lockdown, especially, it was sunny. It was beautiful. I had my family. I was running every single day in the sunshine. And me and my family, we were all obviously a little boy and a little girl. We were just all kind of hanging around with each other all the time, eating, spending time in the sun, going on walks. And it was incredible. And to be honest with you, the comedy started slipping away from me then at that point. And because eventually it felt like it's never going to come back. That's genuinely how it felt. I felt like this is just not, there was so many false starts at the time. Like 6 months later, they were like, oh yeah, we're going to start. And then it was kind of locked down again. And then I sort of gave up a little bit on it. I think I moved some of my shows like several times. And then I was like, just
whatever. Kind
of checking out a little bit now, thinking about going back to work, doing something else, which is what I ended up doing. Like,
yeah, you went back to being electrician.
Electrician, yeah. So we were moving home anyway, but I think, was planning to, but the COVID really put a nail in the coffin of the UK for us. But we were moving home because I was starting to get more successful in Ireland. And then it was like, okay, we still need to go ahead with the plan, and moved home. And then I moved home. Felt like the comedy wasn't coming back. That was in 2020. And then basically I was living in my childhood bedroom with like my wife and kids. And for a while there, I didn't feel like I was going to get work as an electrician or a comedian again. I'd sent out my CVs for electrician, but it's 10 years since I did it, maybe even over 11 years. It's a big gap in your CV to be like, where the hell were you the last 11 years? Who's going to want to employ me? Like, and for a while there, I didn't think any of it was actually going to happen. So I was so grateful when the offer came in.
What's a while? Like months, weeks?
About a month, I'd say, a month or two. But I'd been talking to people in England before I even moved back, saying I'm trying to get back into this electrical game, and I was kind of led down a path or two. Yeah, I know a guy. It was actually a comedian. It was like, I know a guy that's with that company now. Give me your CV. And I was kind of like, and nothing really ever happened. And I kind of given up a little bit on that as well. And I was like, what am I going to do here? And eventually I got a phone call. My uncle was working in a place, and he got talking to a guy that I used to work with like so long ago, like 15 years ago, and explained the situation. And that guy rang me and was like, oh, very sorry for your situation, Chris. Do you still have your tools? Do you have any tools? Or I'm going to put a word in down there for you.
Yeah.
And that happened. And then I got a little interview with my old company, and they were like, because I left them on a really good reputation. I was kind of, it was because of the recession, really. There was no more work. So it's not as if I just left. And it came back in, and he said to me, yep, I'd like you to start next Monday in Cork down in Ringaskiddy. And I was like so grateful. It was genuinely just like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders.
Then you're back stepping out of your comfort zone.
But then I'm so nervous.
Yeah.
I was absolutely terrified. I was more nervous for that first day on site than any gig I've ever done in my entire life. Ever.
What was the fear associated with?
The fear was associated with, I got it into my head that because I was only qualified a year maybe, I got it into my head that I didn't, because electrical, it's a vast enough trade. There's an awful lot to know. But I got it into my head that I need to know everything, and I'm qualified now. And all these fears were like, I'm going to get called down here, and I'm going to be put to work, and they're going to say, go off there and hand me a drawing, for example, and say, head down there and start that. And I'd be like, my fear was like, I won't remember how to read the drawing properly, or
that you won't be able to meet their expectations.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I won't be able to do this, and even though none of that was true, The first couple of days, especially the first couple of weeks, I was just really nervous about being asked something I wouldn't be able to do. And then you just get talking to people and you're like, okay, this guy's qualified 20 years and he's still kind of coming up saying, oh, actually, I haven't done these yet. So, and then you just ask someone.
Yeah.
And then you go, all right, it's just asking. And honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me going back to work as a Sparks. Because after a couple of weeks of getting over the nerves, I really got into it and was like, this is amazing. And was thriving on stuff that I didn't know that I was then getting a chance to learn. And I felt like I just became a far better electrician than I ever was before I ever left. And I really kind of looked back on myself back then and I was like, geez, I really held myself back. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
back then when I was a young fella and I was like, what was I afraid of? I was like, these stuff are like, you just ask and you learn and you can do stuff. And honestly, it was like just, I loved it. I actually loved being back at work. And, you know, so that was another difficult position then down a couple of years later when obviously comedy came calling again. And I then had to make a decision because I was doing the two of them for a while. And that's where things got a little bit tricky, you know?
That is tricky because there's two things you love there. It's not like you went back to being an electrician and you hated it. And it's like, I'm just going to do this until I get back to the comedy game or till I find something else. It's like, I'm actually enjoying this career.
A, I was enjoying it. B, there was great security with it, which I hadn't had with comedy for a very long time. It's part of what drove me to kind of, like I was leaning on comedy financially at times where it was really, really hard thing to do. And money obviously drives anxiety and how am I going to pay the bills and blah,
and
blah, blah.
And it's completely on you too.
All well and good. Exactly. You're self-employed. There's no holidays. All well and good. So I was really used to that. I was like, this is incredible. I couldn't believe it. I had money in my bank every single Friday. And I was so used to not having money. I wasn't really even spending it. I was like, this is genuinely. And the gigs started to come back then. And that was just like a bonus for me in the beginning. And the gigs were coming back. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm making a bit of money on the side. And this is nice. And the work hours were kind of low as well. They were like 39-hour weeks. Everything was very manageable. But obviously, things started to escalate. The comedy starts coming back even more. And the work hours start going up a little bit as well. And it was just really tricky. We were trying to buy a house at the time, which was really...
Then you're sacrificing time with family
of course,
and your wife.
Exactly.
And they begin to suffer in your absence and all this too happens.
Because I was away so much. And it was actually my wife, again, being extremely supportive. We were looking for a house at the time. And I felt a different type of pressure to keep my electrical job because I had a mortgage of which I didn't think I'd ever get being a comedian. So I had this mortgage and I was like, okay, I'd like to get a house before I go back to comedy full time. That was just something that I was fixating on. And it never happened. 8, 9, 10 months of being just outbid, horrible, been put in horrible situations. Even though me and my wife both worked, I technically had 2 jobs. We weren't being fussy. We were genuinely like, this is like, what? We just felt so helpless about the whole thing, you know? And but I had it in my head. I was like, I have to get this. I have to get this house before I jump back into being a comedian or make a choice at least. Or I felt like I needed to bring the comedy up to a level of what I'm earning electrically. I was like, comedy was down here at the time. Electrical's here. I was like, I need to have a level stepping stone. But you know, it was just starting.
That's a good point actually, isn't it? In terms of like when to take the leap.
When to take the leap. But my wife made the point that it's never going to she was like, you're never going to get up there while you're doing that. She was just like, it's so hard. And it really was. And she was like, she could feel me, I think, getting very comfortable in this job as an electrician where I may have been happy, but I was starting to just take gigs that I wanted to take. I was like, I'll take that gig. I like that gig. I've been offered this gig. I don't really like going there. So
has this been stuck in the comfort zone again?
Yes. Yeah. I was like, I'll take this gig and I'll take that gig.
Not really pushing
but
yourself.
I was actually too comfortable, I suppose, in a way, not really pushing myself at all. And I think my wife could see I'd no ambition to kind of, I was still trying to finish off a show that I started before COVID, so I had no real deadline or anything like that either. And eventually that was kind of finished. And then I was like, well, what do I do now? And having a full-time job, there was no time to write an entire new show either. So luckily, as I said, my wife was extremely supportive. She said, she said it to me one time. She said, just give up the job. I thought she was actually messing. She's like, give it up and let's just park the house for now. The gigs are going great. I think if you refocus your time back into comedy, I think, it'll be a good thing to do.
So you hadn't bought a house?
No, we didn't buy a house at all. No, we didn't. We never did. But we did. Long story, but
yeah.
not being an electrician. And she said it to me, and it really took a lot of convincing because I was very comfortable. And she said, and it was a couple of months later again, she was like, I really think you should give up your job.
Okay, so the decision wasn't made on her first suggestion?
No, it took about 6 or 7 months of her honestly being really encouraging and saying,
How long were you working as an electrician?
I went back for 2 years, just over 2 years.
Yeah, okay. It's a long period of time.
Yeah, long enough. Yeah. And I was comfortable and I was like making good money and I was like, oh, this is nice. I like this. And also not having to think or get all your own work, going in, getting a job and going, yeah. But Niamh kind of sort of like kept on nudging me going, I know that you like it and all, but you're not passionate about it. It's the way you are. I think you're going to regret it if you leave it too long and you don't go back to comedy and you don't give comedy one final go. But I had given comedy so much before that. For 12 years or whatever, I had been just comedy and I'd put so much into it. I was kind of afraid to go back.
Was
again.
The fear of failure due to what happened in the pandemic, that you put all this work in and it's taken away from you? It's like, well, do we really want to go through all this again and then potentially lose it all in the foreseeable future again?
It was definitely a contributing factor, and the fact that the break was about to happen and it didn't really happen for me. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm willing to do that again.
The pain of disappointment was still very real.
It was fairly raw, and I said, but to be fair now, there was also that nagging kind of thing at the back of my mind. The gigs that I was doing again were really good fun. And they were really good fun because there was no financial pressure on them. And it was like, and I found myself to be way more playful and way more creative. And I felt like I'd just gotten a little bit better as a comedian because of that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I went, I was really enjoying comedy.
You can get into a bit more of a flow.
I could just do it for the sake of doing it. And I wasn't like, I'm doing this because I have to do it. Yeah. I'm doing this because I have to drive to Hull for something silly like £190 where I'm going to spend 85 on diesel. But I have to do it because that's all I have today. Do you know what I mean? I'm spending 7 hours in a car and I'm gone and whatever else. But this time then my wife was like, let's park the house. That was the hardest thing to do because I was convinced I'd never get a mortgage again. So I was like, what if we never get a mortgage again? And she was like, well, we never do. Because when the gig started coming back full time, I remember getting into my car on a Friday after work in Cork and driving to Armagh, straight to Armagh, like 3 o'clock, straight to Armagh, and then getting out of the car and taking off my work gear at the back and putting on jeans and t-shirt and going in. And I opened for Neil Delamere at the time, and I went in and opened for him and went back to my car and drove back to Cork and then got up for work the next morning at like 6:30. And I'd done that. I'd done that a few times. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, it is kind of something needs to happen here. And like with the encouragement of her, I suppose, really, she said, go back into it. But when you go back into it this time, put all of your videos out there. She said, you work really hard at comedy and you always have, but I don't think you're very good at putting yourself out there. And I would agree with her, to be fair. I had tried the videos thing and sort of failed, and I had been talking to other people. So when I quit my job, there was also other factors in that my mum was looking after my kids. The two of them were now starting sort of school at different times. We didn't live near the schools. She didn't drive. So we were kind of looking into childcare. The whole thing, everything was kind of pointing towards, it's a bit easier if I'm off during the day and I'm doing a bit of gigs, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but she kind of went, go back to it and throw yourself into it. And I really threw myself into it with regards to the videos, and it didn't happen straight away. It took a couple of months, but I could feel it sort of snowballing a little bit. And then wrote a new show about giving up my job again, circumstances that I found difficult. I turned them into comedy, and about trying to write a house, about trying to buy a house. And all of that ended up giving me like 20 minutes of material or 30 minutes of material, and was the foundation of a new show for me, and ended up kind of being like, you know what I mean?
I'm just remembering actually one of your jokes about buying the house that you were.
Yes.
outbid.
Outbid by.
Remind me that again.
Oh yeah, so that was a true story. Yeah, we went into one house, and the estate agent told us we were the first people to see the house, but we were just up the stairs, and we came down, and he was like, "Yeah, there's been a bid," and we hadn't even bid actually, but it was something ridiculous, like it was 40 over asking, and we were like, "Oh my god!"
Yes.
Excuse me, and that was an investor, and it was like, "Oh shit!" This was when it just felt really hopeless. This is when it felt like, oh. And you couldn't just not but laugh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You couldn't not but laugh. So I went back to comedy, and about a year and a half later I had to get a new mortgage and got it. And eventually last year, at the end of that tour, we ended up buying the house that we live in. So a kind of full circle moment. Was terrified of never owning a house. And it was like the very last week of my tour. We were still looking for houses and being outbid. And then our landlord sort of rang and was like, would you have any interest in buying that house that you're renting? And we were like, okay, amazing. And we did. And it really worked out for us. You know?
Brilliant. So. Yeah. What was it like in terms of, or what is it like in terms of writing your shows? And something you mentioned there earlier was turning hardships in your life into humor, or finding the humor in the hardships of life. I think that's something that comedians do quite well. Do you find the writing is sometimes quite therapeutic for you in terms of reframing difficult situations in your life and bringing some humor to it? Yeah,
it can be. Yeah, it definitely makes a difference for me. I remember writing about my wife giving birth for the first time. It was really complicated and really scary and really dark. And I remember holding my son for the first time, and it was an emergency C-section, and all these people came in. It was a massive panic all of a sudden because my wife was in trouble and they had to reoperate on her, and it was really scary, and she's okay. But I remember being terrified of the whole thing, being sent out of the room with my son and not seeing her for like 5 hours and being updated that, they're reoperating. And, when you see people in a room going, oh, get me 4 units of O negative yesterday, and they're running around and you're getting shunned out of the room and you're saying goodbye to your wife and I'll see you later. You never in a million years could you think that, oh, there's comedy there, there's something there. But there was. And I managed to kind of turn that into a bit and into a show, which is like, it was the flip of emotion for me, really. It was like the happiest moment of my life, my wife Niamh and my son Jack for the very first time together, right there. And then to be just, bang, get out, no. It was just like, and we need 4 units of O negative yesterday. It's like the flip in
perspective
and in your mood. It happened all so quickly and so like, abruptly. It was just like, oh my God, this is just... and afterwards, looking back at it, I think I wrote a joke like going, I don't know if you've ever had that sort of thing happen to you where your mood changes so quickly. Like I felt like I was halfway down a water slide and someone said to me, there's no water at the end of this. Yeah. So you're kind of going, you're having a great time. You're like, oh shit, I could be in trouble. I could be in big trouble here. But yeah, and I think that was one of my wife's favorite shows as well. Because we were all safe in the end.
Yeah.
But
she was the start of it.
Yeah, and I like kind of I do like writing about that stuff. It is definitely therapeutic.
Yeah. And then you've got your offline show at the moment, which you wrote whilst you were offline.
I was offline, yeah.
What, like, if you reflect back on your decision to go offline and you were hanging around with a Nokia phone for a period of time, was it?
Yeah. 8.5 weeks media. It was 58 days without logging on to any devices, without using any internet at all. So I just had a Nokia phone. And
what was the purpose?
So the purpose was, when I went back and did this huge tour, I think I had become so addicted to my phone because I was doing all my own social media and I was putting up all my own videos, and it started to turn into a little bit of a vicious circle. So you start going, oh, I better check on that video. How's that video doing now? And you're like, I'll just check again. And then you're checking your ticket sales. And what happened was, and then you're scrolling mindlessly. And what happened was I couldn't focus. I needed to write a new show and I could not focus.
Couldn't separate yourself.
I couldn't separate myself from the phone. I would go, I need to write a new show. I'm nearly finished this tour. I need a new show, and I need to start writing. And I found my attention span was gone, like completely gone, honestly. And my creativity, I felt like I had nothing to write about. Like the last couple of years, I'd given up my job. I'd been trying to buy a house. There was no massive inspiration there. Not that you always need it, but and I had this idea years and years ago. I'd love to give up the internet. Like in 2012, I think I wrote a little pitch about giving up the internet because I got a bad review in Edinburgh, and it really hurt me, I think. I went, absolute arseholes. And I was like, I hate the internet. I want to give up the internet. And I toyed with the idea back then. But it was on the way back from Edinburgh when I was doing that Back At It tour, the big tour that was really successful. I was like, I want to write a new show. And then it just kind of pops back into my mind. I was like, I'd love to just give up the internet again and write a show about that. And
it's quite difficult to sit down and write, I imagine. So
yeah,
when the phone is there, it's a very easy thing to use to procrastinate.
It's procrastinating is like, it became my biggest downfall. And even when I put it in another room, the problem with the phone is, even when you sort of distance yourself from it and you say, okay, that's me now, I'm going to write now for the next hour, your phone rings, or you get a text message on your phone and it's important and you have to check it. But when you check the text message, then you're kind of gone, oops, before you know it, you're scrolling again and you didn't even realize. The text message is irrelevant, you know? So, and luckily again, my wife agreed to do this and I made a documentary about it. So I handed her on the second last day of my big, huge Back At It tour, I handed her my, and we documented everything. I handed her my smartphone and she locked me out of it. And she changed the Wi-Fi password in the house. And I had a little documentary and I gave myself 8.5 weeks to sort of turn this show around. And, you know, without the distraction of social media and even I had no distractions whatsoever. So my wife was looking after absolutely everything on my phone. But I also had all the convenient things that you use your phone for. They were also gone. So I didn't have any sat navs. I had no audiobooks. I had no Spotify. Simple, doing my banking. She did every single thing for me. I was gigging in the UK and she was ringing me saying, you got a WhatsApp from this person about this. It just sometimes it felt so stupid. Yeah. But the point I was, you know, I had to sort of stick to it. I had to get my boarding cards printed off and fly to England and try and find my hotel without a sat nav. You know what I mean? With the maps.
Buy a map. Yeah.
Ask people.
Can you still buy a map, can you?
You can, yeah. I actually got the maps online before I went offline.
Yeah. Okay.
I got the Irish ones.
Yeah.
But then when I went to Edinburgh for a month, I found it hard to buy a map actually. Okay. Because even all the garages are like, we don't sell them anymore. And eventually I got one. So that was how I was finding my way around.
Nearly switches on that side of your brain again, doesn't it? That we don't use anymore.
We just stopped. I sat nav my way here now again. Yeah. So I'm back to that. But at the same time, I was over dependent on it. I was sat naving my way home every night going, what are you doing? Like, you live there. You know where it is.
Yeah.
Just take a chance on yourself.
And again, that's a huge step out of your comfort zone.
It was, yeah. It was.
Trying to figure out a way around Edinburgh, or even not being on your phone for, what'd you do, 58 days?
58 days, yeah. And on average, apparently, according to this piece, I think it was in the Examiner, Irish people were picking up their phones 58 times a day. So that was just kind of coincidental. But yeah, 58 days. The reason was, it was the end of my tour, the Back At It tour. And the reason, it just kind of coincidentally went to, I had booked myself in to do a solo show in Cork on the 7th of September it was. And I was like, okay, I think that's a good time frame. I want my phone back that night. I don't want to see it again. I want it back that night. And I want to see, I probably had 15 minutes of material. I want to see if I can turn over a new show by the time. So I advertised that as well as a brand new show, even though I didn't have a show at all. And it normally takes you about a year to write a new show. I just said, I'm going to really...
You gave yourself 58 days instead of 365?
Yeah, okay. pretty much. But you wouldn't believe it. Like, I never wrote as much in my life. I was so productive. Any dead space, I was like normally on my phone or Netflix, or, you know, even when I was getting the air coach to Dublin to fly somewhere, I'd always just watch several episodes or something. But I was able to write, and I did loads of traveling. I was in Edinburgh and I was staying in Dunblane. I was writing in every day and listening to my show on the way back because I had a recorder thing, and then writing on the way in again. And I did a work in progress in Edinburgh, which I never done either, which really speeded up the whole process. So basically I told them, like, this show isn't ready. I had notes on the stage with me, and every single day I was kind of tweaking it, like, you know, and trying to make it a little bit better. And it kind of worked out. By the end of it, I had a show, and something I definitely wouldn't have had I been on my phone for that time. I just know it, because I barely got there without the phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I never rode so much. When we were in Edinburgh and Niamh was kind of waking up in the mornings, I'd be up already listening to the gig the night before, trying to rewrite jokes and write new jokes. And, you know, it was
Edinburgh became like a trial and error process.
Yeah, that's what it is. And it was amazing. It was genuinely, I definitely felt my anxiety fell dramatically. And I think as well, a comedian like myself, when you're not creating stuff, you start to feel anxious. I don't know what it is, but you just start to feel anxious.
The fear that you're not going to come up with new material?
Something like that, maybe, yeah. But once you start and try to be creative, I feel like it's a really good antidote to anxiety. So I had the kind of being more creative than ever and not having my phone, those two things combined, my anxiety was going down a lot. But then there was some difficult positions I put myself into where I genuinely got lost because it didn't have a map or a sat nav, and I almost missed a couple of gigs. And that was like, okay, this is really stupid. This is so stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did a gig in Mayo as well as part of the documentary where I just had to get to Mayo. I had to get to this pub in Mayo in Tormakeedy, and it was like, I just had the maps and we had so much fun getting there. Then I had to book accommodation, and I was like, how do you book accommodation without the internet? So I ended up not doing that because there's no direct inquiry numbers. There's no 11811. You need the internet to book something, really, unless you're going to go and knock on the door. So I think we bought a tent, and I took a tent and I rang the people that were running the gig, and I said, can I put a tent in your front pub? And he was like, yeah, I guess you can. And that's what we did. And we had so much fun making this documentary as well, you know.
What's the story of the documentary? Where's this going to be aired, or what's happening with that?
Being edited at the moment by myself. I made it all myself as well. I kind of pitched it to a few TV people. They never really took on the idea. So I said, like, I'll just make it now. So it's finished, but it's kind of being edited. So it's kind of two stories. It's like, can I survive without my phone, and can I turn a show over, and what are the overriding kind of effects it has on me creatively and everything else. And it was so much fun to do. I just had a kind of cameraman with me for a lot of the time who was kind of documenting and following me to gigs, and he went to Mayo with me. He followed me up to Edinburgh, like, you know, it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
And where are you going with this documentary?
I hope to pitch it to a few people. Hopefully, someone will take it off me, and if not, I'll put it out there myself. You know,
Brilliant.
I'll put it out there on my YouTube channel, and when it's all finished,
or
I'll put it out somewhere. But I'm hoping someone will. We're sort of in the editing phase now, so there's another little bit of work in it, but we filmed for. This is going on for 8.5 weeks, so we had so much footage in the end. It was crazy. Like that one little trip to Mayo where we camped we had like 2 hours of footage. That was hilarious, but we have to kind of get it all down and edit it and do voiceover work and maybe bring in some music for production. So I'm really proud of it. It's not finished yet, but I'll kind of release it. Hopefully someone will take it off me, but you never know.
Yeah. We give so much power to the internet as you've become aware.
Yeah.
And then we lose that power that we have within in terms of I can actually manage without this internet or without a map or without...
Yeah, you can. And even like for me, I would be like, how do I get home? What am I going to eat? What's around here? Where will I meet you? I'll press all this now and I'll be there, and I won't have to think for myself. So one thing I did notice when I was off it was I was far more present, even with drives, because I'd make a plan before I leave home and I'd be like, this is the way, we're going to take this road, and I still have the maps, but you're just simply looking out for road signs, and it makes you more present than having the sat nav on while listening to an audiobook and just turning up somewhere
automatic.
and going, I forgot. I can't remember that journey.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How did I get here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was it was such an incredible experience. Like, not all easy, but yeah, I'm so glad I did it. I know I have this show that I didn't have that I'm touring and started talking about, and you know, and it would be hypocritical of me to kind of go. It's kind of funny in a way because I got a break online. I never really got the TV, so people were really confused, going, "You're just giving up." You know, this is giving you this huge break.
Yeah.
But yeah, part of that break was a break where I was like, I'm addicted to my phone now and I was always bad, but that definitely made me way worse. And now I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, now you're at the figuring out process.
Now I'm figuring it out because I got back my phone and I didn't want to touch it for a week or two and was really good, but old habits come back and I'm pushing a new tour now. So I figured it out, but I've definitely learned an awful lot and I'm getting there.
Yeah. So do you actually separate yourself from the phone more often now? Do you take days where it's screen free, or have you applied any of these sort of?
I do. Do you know what? Actually, somebody showed me how to do something. It was actually the guy that made the documentary with me. On your iPhone, you can put it into, what is it called again now? There's a mode you can do it in settings, assistive access. So you can set up assistive access on your phone. So basically, you go into your phone, and you go into assistive access and you can pick several apps, the only ones that you want. So for example, I pick the phone, the messages, the banking, the camera and the email. And that's kind of it. They're all, and then they're the only apps on your phone then. Everything else is gone. And you need to turn off assistive access to get rid of them. And it's a code. You need to go in and turn it off and re-enter the code. So there's a bit of work in doing it. So I'm trying to put that on a bit more often. So instead of leaving my phone at home and being anxious in case somebody calls me or someone needs me, turning on that mode, where it's essentially turning your phone into a dumb phone.
Yeah.
Bringing the phone with you. And then out of habit, you'll still pick it up. Even for a week, I was picking up my phone. Or going to pick up my phone when I didn't. I was like, so you'll still pull it out of your pocket and you're like, all right, I don't. I'm not being, do you know what I mean? I'm not being enticed by all these notifications for social media or anything like that. We all feel like we need to get back to everybody straight away as well, which I think is unhealthy, and I'm still a little bit guilty of it. Like, I go, I better get back to them immediately.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ridiculous.
So again, if you reflect back on this whole journey you've been on so far, can you identify maybe a moment or a person that became the catalyst for your growth and your success to this point? Like, was there, because as I mentioned at the beginning, there's been failures, there's been setbacks, there's been bad reviews as much as there's been amazing reviews. There's been sold out gigs as much as there's been, a handful of people in gigs. So
yes, absolutely.
With all of these difficulties and problems on the way, like, at what point did you identify, or did someone identify for you that, hey, Chris, you've got something here and you need to go all in?
Yeah. I think my wife is the obvious answer, but it's kind of my wife and the situation at the same time. So when I said I went back to work as an electrician for 2 years, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It genuinely was, because I kind of faced a bit of a fear, because it was always on my mind for the previous 10 years. I was like, I can't go back to that now. I can't go back to that. And I felt almost cornered into comedy at that time. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't always working out. So I felt like I was really in a corner with it. And I always had this anxiety about what if it doesn't work out and you have to get a real job? How difficult it's going to be? Well,
was it quite a defeatist attitude about going back to being
before I went back? It was, even though it didn't happen. But in my mind, I was like, what if comedy doesn't work out and I have to get a real job? Or comedy is a real job. I kind of hate when people say that, actually, but but you know what I mean. Yeah. What about it? So that was a kind of a fear in me. That was a weirdly something that was always bouncing around my head for the previous nearly 10 years while I was doing comedy. I was like, what if this doesn't work out and you have to go back to work? And then I was forced into that position. And after a couple of weeks being uncomfortable, I was like, okay, why was I afraid of that?
Not a big deal.
What the hell? This is incredible. I actually genuinely really liked it. So then I probably subconsciously held myself back before that a little bit with comedy. even though I thought I was giving it everything and I was putting all my self-worth into it, I was probably holding myself back a little bit that I wasn't even aware of, like the whole putting myself out there online or whatever. So then when I went back to work, it was like, okay, you're more than capable to do that. So that doesn't matter anymore. And then my wife, genuinely, she was like, give it up and put yourself out there. She was like, I know you can do it. I believe in you. And you believe in yourself and just do it. Just do it. I remember like we were on a beach one day when I finally made that decision. And I said, really? Will I just hand my notice in and work? And she was like, yeah, just do it. I was like, are you serious? And she was like, yes, like seriously do it. But when you go back, do everything you can. Put everything out there. And that was the kind of moment where I went, okay, right, let's give it a proper go. Put 100% of myself into it. And the reason I was able to put all of myself into the comedy, I think, was I didn't have that fear of going back to work anymore.
Yeah.
Because I just done it and it wasn't that bad. So I was a little bit more kind of free with it all and said, yeah, why don't we just go for it? Why don't we just put everything into comedy? And if it doesn't work out in 6 months, if I have to go back to this job or if I have to get another job, I absolutely will do that. So it kind of took, I think that little bit of fear was gone. That little bit of fear of comedy not working out was gone because I was like, I went back to a real job and it was absolutely fine. And the encouragement of my wife to say, you can do this, you can do it and put yourself out there. And she would have argued with me down through the years saying, you don't put enough of your stuff online. And I was like, well, I tried to do it. And so then I started reaching out to other comedians and they started reaching out to me going, yeah, if you kind of put your video up every single day for a month or two, you'll get traction. And I was like, okay, even if I've put the videos up already, they're like, yeah, absolutely. So I sort of left work with a plan, with a lot of encouragement from my wife. And when I gave up that job, I learned how to edit properly. And I pretty much went to a library for like 2 months straight, every single day, like cutting a new video, putting it up, cutting a new video, putting it up. And eventually it just started kind of snowballing. So it's probably those two factors really that is the point where I said, let's do it. And let's kind of like not be so afraid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there can always be a fear of it working out as well and being like, what if I'm not able to handle it? Or what if I'm not good enough for the next level or something else like that? But weirdly enough, it took all of those things. And also, the fact of the matter is, if I hadn't had the 10 years previous of doing comedy, I wouldn't have had any of those videos that I was editing to put up. So it was that back catalogue and it was the fact that I was writing shows every year. I had all this material just on hard drives all over the place, all these gigs recorded, and I just started going through them and started chopping them up and got a kind of a break. Weirdly, like got a break of something, you know. Some of those clips were like, oh, I did this material 7 years ago. Yeah. And now 1 million people have seen it all of a sudden. Do you know what I mean?
That's where I found you. I mean, I found you on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Years ago. And TikTok was the first place where it kind of blew up. And then Facebook, then Instagram. So very happy.
It's almost as though the phone is like a hammer where you can use a hammer to build a house.
Yes.
But you can also use a hammer to destroy a house.
Yes.
So it's all about how you use it. So you had to park yourself in the phone there for a period of time because it was actually destroying parts of your life, or it was causing disruption. And then at the same time, the phone is also helping you to create your business and build up your persona and your reputation. So it's the approach there, isn't it, in terms of the how we use the hammer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so then now you're at the, let's say, would you even say at the proverbial top of the mountain?
I'm still ambitious to go a bit. Like I'd like to do some stuff in America maybe. And
are you like, would you call yourself successful now?
Yeah, I definitely think I'm really happy with where I am in comedy. Just like I'm doing these tours that I never thought I'd do. It's like I'm in all these venues where I'd opened for comedians previously and they're sold out, and I'm like, this is incredible. And I'm so grateful, but I do think I have another bit to go. I think I can get better as a comedian, and I think I can get a bit, maybe
expand a bit further.
Expand a bit, like maybe America, Australia, some parts of Europe or something, and just kind of trying to get better every year. I always kind of go, just really like throw myself into it. So I don't know what the next show is going to be about at all, but I know for a fact I'll want it to be better than this one, and I'll want to be better at stand up the next time people come to see me or buy a ticket, like, you know. But I am like genuinely very grateful for where I am, and I'm like it's going amazingly well.
Is there a cost to the success though for you personally? Or what is the cost personally?
I don't know if there's much of a cost. I mean, I get a little bit of you get a little bit of stick online for people that don't like you because you reach so many people, I think.
Does that still get to you?
No.
Okay.
If I can think of something
you can turn it into a joke.
I'll say it straight away. If I can't, I'll just block them if they're being particularly nasty or trying to just cause fights in the comments. To be fair, touch wood, it doesn't happen that often. I'm just saying this is something that hasn't happened before because I wasn't reaching that many people. There's a little bit of getting used to like being known or being recognized. Yeah. I like that though. I like when people come and say hello to me. I think it's great. Get a picture with them or whatever. So there's a little bit of that. And
hasn't become annoying yet.
Hasn't become annoying, no. Well, I'll tell you what, the only thing that kind of freaked me out a little bit is once or twice I've been tagged in a photo, but I haven't been unaware of it. So someone will tag me in something and say, "Oh, I saw you here." Like, and it would just be me eating with my family.
Oh, so it's not like a selfie.
They're on a different table and they're like, "Saw you here," and I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of weird."
Yeah.
Jeez, do you know what I mean? Just come say hello. Like, don't take a picture of me. Okay. From the distance and just put it up and like, you know, and tag me. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
So that's getting my head around that. But yeah, there's always kind of adjustment periods, isn't there? Yeah. I do have to go. Oh, I'm a big enough touring act now, and I need to live up to that, and I need to.
It comes with a higher expectation.
Yeah,
so you're going into a gig. And people are expecting
my name's on the ticket, so I'm not the support act anymore, or I'm not like
when you're the support act. It's like
there's not as much pressure, and you can have fun with it, and you're a business. You're a bonus probably, but this time, there is more pressure, but I can't really let it get to me in a way. I have to do what I do. I have to go out and do my best and do the comedy I like doing, because my shows are probably a little bit different. My clips are all nice and short. My shows are an hour and 20 minutes long, and there's always a big story that I kind of weave through the show, and I'll tie it all together in the end. And, you know, maybe some people that come to see me go, "Oh, I wasn't really expecting that." Or they're expecting me, weirdly enough, to do the jokes that are already online, which I don't do. I'm like, they're done. They're kind of done. They'll never be repeated in the show again. You know what I mean? And they'll be like, "Can you do this bit?" And I'm like, "Well, that's from 4 years ago. I can't really just seamlessly plug that in now. That's strange." So do you have a routine before you go on stage? Do the nerves still get to you, or are you just buzzing to go? No, not massively nervous anymore. Unless I'm writing a new show and it's like when I don't know the ideas. A little bit of excitement, maybe kind of a nervous excitement. But no, I'd be generally I'd be fairly relaxed. I love doing it.
Has it always been this way? Have you always found it confident on stage? No,
I was bloody getting sick, puking when I first started. Like genuinely that nervous, where I would go and have to be sick. I need to get sick. Like terrified, but wanting to do it. Almost the same as when I used to box. I was like terrified, but like something was driving me there to go, you have to do it. But the nerves...
You knew the reward was going to be worth the cost.
Yeah, the nerves finally, they kind of eventually went away. Now, they might come back every now and again if you're doing like a TV thing or if it's a stranger gig or something, as you know, you might be a bit nervous, but generally it'd be healthy enough amount of nerves, you know.
And do you look at others for inspiration? Is there a comedian out there that you would take inspiration from, or are you just kind of going, I'm just doing my own thing?
No, I really enjoy other comedians' work, but I can never kind of go, I'd like to do this or I'd like to be like that.
Or even in terms of their presence on stage, or some of the things they do, or how they interact with the audience, which you started doing.
I guess I was inspired by that, by watching comedians doing crowd work, and something I was terrified of. I remember opening for Neil Delamere, and he's so good at it. Like, he's so good, so quick. And I remember watching him going, I'd love to be able to do that. I'd love to be able to do that. And then I sort of set up these comedy clubs in Cork and was able to kind of, eventually I just kind of pushed myself to start doing that. So I'd definitely be inspired to take chances like that. But
And it doesn't always work out.
It doesn't always work out, and that's absolutely fine. You come to a dead end with someone, and you get better at reading body language as well. And sometimes the person's just genuinely uncomfortable talking to you, and I never really want to rib fun out of them. I'm like, I will know the situation and try and move on to something else. Or
so before you start interacting with the audience or engaging with the audience, you're looking at the audience and assessing people's body language in terms of if I pick in this fella. Yeah, I think he'll be able to take the joke, or he'll be able to take a bit of slagging.
A teeny bit, or I might be able to tell it from watching my opening act or my support act, who's normally Cornelius Patrick O'Sullivan.
Okay.
I'll normally like look at him and go, oh, I can kind of read the audience.
Yeah.
But it's normally when I just start talking to them. I'll say, how are you, buddy? And if I can feel like they just really don't want to talk to me at all, I'll never like push it. I think that's kind of silly. But sometimes people love that back and forth, and they love being involved, and they love setting up a joke. So I kind of be more looking for that, you know?
Yeah.
But not to the cost of the show. Like, if I feel like they're not up for it, I'll just kind of quickly enough pivot into just material and the show. Yeah. And that's enough, like, you know?
Brilliant. And you've got the show on at the moment.
Yes.
Offline. Yeah, so.
Excuse me, yeah.
And that's going to be running for the
rest
of the year,
I'd say, for the rest of the year. I won't start working on something else until next year.
And there's tickets still available for many of those shows?
Yes, chriskencomedy.com. A lot of them are sold out, but there is tickets available, and there's more dates being added the whole time.
Brilliant.
So, and it's a brand new show, so it's nothing you see me do online will be in it. So, you know, you can watch, and I've numerous specials online as well, if you want to watch a longer version and get an idea of what the full shows are like.
Brilliant.
And then come and see it,
Yeah, go and check it out. And Instagram and TikTok is?
Yes, at Chris Ken Comic.
Brilliant.
At Chris Ken Comic,
Delighted to have you here, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Gavin.
Delighted.
Cheers. I appreciate that.
Brilliant.